in the Azure environment, right? Like the data that the servers and such, that you can back up that data as well, and it's completely separate from the Microsoft environment, right?
Correct. Yeah, we the direct or the Axient X360 Recover agent sits on that protected system and will replicate over to the Axient cloud. Mm-hmm. So in the case of the downtime or any disruptions that Microsoft has, you can quickly still be able to recover or ensure that you minimize data loss as much as possible. Because like you mentioned previously with Microsoft and their terms and conditions, that they're not liable for any disruptions that occur and cause possible data loss. So they recommend having third-party tools
absolutely
in these type of events.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things. There's people ask me all the time, what are the most important things I need to do in Office 365 to make sure that it's wisely used? Well, you need to have multi-factor turned on. And what I always say, number 2, is you need a distinctly separate third-party backup. IronEdge, we sell that as part of our core services, right? You just get it as something you get with us. And then we leverage Axient to be transparent is what we do, but you get that with services with us. But those are the 2 most important things. They're both equally as important.
Yeah. Even, I mean, because obviously Microsoft provides their own backups in the Azure environment, right? And those are perfectly capable, but there's something to be said about keeping all of your eggs in one basket, right?
That's right.
I won't go too much into detail, but even in the past week, there was this state-sponsored vulnerability where it leveraged the global admin account that's created as part of a hybrid AD sync solution, like using older versions of AD sync.
Yeah.
And it got it by accessing this global admin account that had unfettered access to the entire Microsoft environment, is able to destroy or damage the Azure environment, access your backups in the Azure environment, all the data, 365, anything that had access as a global admin, basically destroyed that information, right? And having that ability to have this data in a separate environment, which is called air-gapped, you have a completely separate environment that has no access to the internal environment, protects you from those types of situations.
It's logically and physically separate. I want to say one thing too, for anybody that's listening to this that uses the Google platform for their mail and for their file storage and all that stuff. I have one client that does that out of my book of business, and Axient works for that too. Yep. So I want to make sure, I want to point that out, that just because you're not a Microsoft shop, you're a Google shop. All of this applies to you as well.
One thing I wanted to also add specifically around taking backups is that just because you have a backup doesn't mean that backup is actually good and can actually recover from that backup. So there's additional processes that actually we run against those backups, specifically the auto verify process, which ensures that a boot VM that it actually boots up, and we can take a boot VM screenshot to ensure that yes, this thing is up. The necessary services have also started and is running. There's a heartbeat, basic communications are there as well. And that's all made possible because of the underlying technology with chain-free technology, that the snapshot, it can be quickly virtualized and a quicker time than a chain-based backup. There's additional, depending if it's a traditional appliance, if the auto verify is running on the appliance versus direct to cloud, but we also have advanced checks that goes beyond those initial verification process. And we do a check disk operation to ensure each volume within the protected system, the actual integrity of those file systems are good. And there's some auto healing that follows up if in the event that something does not check out correctly. So I just wanted to point that out, that, that's just that added insurance that ensures that your backups can be recovered.
It's really a valuable tool because I have clients that fall under compliance issues and audit issues, and multiple times a year I have different, maybe a third-party auditing team or a consultant auditor or something like that. They'll come in, they go, basically prove that the backups work, right? And so for all of my clients that use the Axient infrastructure, I basically will produce screenshots that show that this virtual machine has been fired up and tested monthly, or I'll be able to show the logs that the system creates. It says this was tested and this was tested and this was tested. It's very, very powerful. And I can't think of a time off the top of my head where I ever had any trouble with any of that. It just works great. It does a good job of proving it's doing what we're selling.
Yeah, and we didn't mention it, but you can certainly lean on their expertise, their engineers. You don't necessarily need to be an expert on backup and recovery efforts, right? Like if something happens and you need help to get back on your feet, they're a great partner, which is why we've loved them for the past decade of business together. That allows us to lean on them to make sure that they have the expertise, they have the experts that help recovery efforts in the event that something should happen. Which is why, again, whether you're talking about being back up on your feet from a continuity standpoint within a couple of hours, or having site resiliency with an office in the cloud, or having protection of the data that someone else owns, like Google or Microsoft 365 or Azure, all of these types of solutions all kind of boil down into one great product that allows you to check all those boxes, which is why we strongly suggest either looking at your own environment, seeing where your weaknesses are, and figuring out how, in the event that something like this should happen, how you would go about recovering it, how quickly you can do it, and most importantly, how cost effective it's going to be, right? You can't throw millions of dollars towards recovery efforts. So putting these solutions in place to prevent having weeks of downtime and loss of money from that downtime is critical for you to really realize, and being able to be recovered from those efforts and done it quickly without a ton of cost is a huge solution for your organization.
Yeah, sets them up for success, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it really does.